We all think we know the story of Exodus, right? The parting of the Red Sea, the 10 plagues, it's epic, movie-level stuff. But what if I told you that underneath all that spectacle, there's a masterfully crafted strategic plan, a sort of divine playbook for leadership, for spiritual warfare, and even for our own personal growth?
So yeah, we've all seen the movie, but have we really seen the playbook? That's what we're going to do today. We're not just going to retell the story. We're going to pull back the curtain and dissect the strategy behind it. We'll look at the Exodus not as just a series of random miracles, but as a three-part divine game plan. Ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, part 1. Every great plan needs a great leader. But people like this, they aren't born overnight. The first part of this divine strategy was basically an 80-year-long leadership program designed to create the perfect person for the job, Moses. Now this timeline, it totally reframes Moses' life. You see, for the first 40 years, he's a prince. He gets this royal education, he's got all the status you could want. But when he tries to be a hero on his own terms, using his own strength, it backfires spectacularly. It leads to failure and exile. But that exile, you see, it wasn't a punishment. It was the second crucial phase of his training. Another 40 years, this time as a humble shepherd, learning patience and dependence out in the quiet of the wilderness. And this right here is the whole point. Just look at the contrast. Moses' method was all about self-reliance, his status, his own strength, and it completely failed. God's method, it involves stripping all of that away. The goal was to replace that self-confidence with God confidence, to show him that the mission's success was never going to depend on the leader's ability, but on God's power.
You know, this whole process is a lot like forging a sword. The time in the palace, that was the high-quality raw metal. But that metal was brittle. It broke under pressure. So, the 40 years in the wilderness acted as the furnace, heating and hammering him with humility, tempering that steel. And then, finally, those intense face-to-face confrontations with Pharaoh, well, that was the sharpening process, getting him ready to be wielded by God.
All right, so with the leader forged and ready, the plan moves into its second phase. And this is where things get really intense. See, the 10 plagues weren't just random acts of destruction. Oh no, they were a targeted, strategic, spiritual assault on the entire belief system of Egypt. This quote really gets to the heart of it. The goal wasn't just to get the Israelites out of Egypt. It was about publicly and systematically dismantling the power of the Egyptian gods, proving they were absolutely nothing in the face of the one true God. I mean, just look at this direct matchup. This was not a blanket attack, this was precision targeting. Turning the Nile to blood, that's a direct hit on Hapi, the god of the Nile, the very source of Egypt's life. Plunging the entire land into darkness, that's a direct challenge to Re, the all-powerful sun god. And that final devastating plague, the death of the firstborn, that was the ultimate takedown, targeting Pharaoh himself, who everyone considered to be a god on earth. I love this image. It's like a public wrestling match. In one corner, you've got Egypt's entire roster of gods, each one a champion in their own little domain. The river, the sun, fertility, wealth. And in the other corner, Yahweh steps into the ring and one by one pins each of these specialists on their own turf. It all culminates in the final takedown of the team captain, Pharaoh himself.
And as the pressure mounted, look what happens. Pharaoh starts trying to negotiate. He offers compromise after compromise, just trying to hang on to some control. First, it's, okay, you can worship, but do it here. Then it's, fine, you can go, but not too far. Each compromise just shows that the strategy was working, weakening his resolve until he had nothing left to bargain with.
All right, that brings us to the third and final part of the strategy, which kicks in right after their dramatic escape. And on the surface, it seems kind of strange. Why, after all this, would God choose a longer, harder path for his people?
Exactly. They're finally free, the enemy is defeated. There's a known shortcut to the promised land. So why lead them on a long, winding journey through a barren wilderness? Well, the answer is pure strategy. That shortcut? It went right through enemy territory. And God knew that after 400 years of slavery, the Israelites were simply not ready for a fight. Think about it. If they faced a brutal war immediately, their brand new fragile faith would have broken, and they probably would have run right back to the slavery they knew. So the detour, it wasn't a punishment, it was an act of protection. A great way to picture this is as a form of divine physical therapy. I mean, after being spiritually bedridden for centuries, you don't just throw someone into a boxing match, right? No, you prescribe a long, steady walk to build up their strength,
their trust, and their endurance for the real challenges that lay ahead. The detour wasn't a delay, it was preparation. So this is the crucial point. The Exodus isn't just an ancient story, it's a playbook filled with principles that apply directly to our lives today. So how can we use this divine strategy?
So let's recap the 3 core lessons for us. First, the forging. Don't despise the humble, quiet, or difficult seasons in your life. They might be the very furnace God is using to prepare you. Second, the showdown. Recognize that your biggest obstacles aren't always what they seem on the surface. There's often a deeper spiritual battle being waged. And third, the detour. Learn to trust that the longer, harder path you're on might actually be God's way of protecting you and building you up for what's next.
This is a powerful one to think about. When you feel called to something new or to a deeper commitment, what are the voices of compromise you hear? You know, the ones that say, don't get too serious, or sure, you can follow God, but just leave this one part of your life behind. Recognizing those compromises for what they are is the first step to overcoming them, just as Moses did.
And finally, I'll leave you with this. Is there an area in your life where you feel like you're on a long, winding road? A place where you're asking, why is this taking so long? Well, maybe it's not a setback at all. Perhaps you're on a divine detour, a path specifically designed to protect you, to strengthen your faith, and to prepare you perfectly for the promised land that's just ahead.